Chrono Wars, Battle Across Time. The Temporal Rift. The world changed in a single night. No warnings, no explanations, just chaos. Across the globe, strange anomalies appeared. Time itself cracked open, spilling pieces of the past and the future into the present. Cities flickered between different centuries. A Roman legion marched through the streets of New York. Samurai warriors appeared in a desert battlefield where modern tanks stood frozen in disbelief. And above all, the sky pulsed with an eerie, shifting glow, as if the universe itself was unraveling. At the International Science Institute in Geneva, the world's top physicists stared in horror at the data on their screens. Dr. Evelyn Carter, the leading expert in quantum physics, wiped her forehead, her hands trembling. "This is impossible," she whispered. "Time doesn't work like this." Beside her, Dr. Raju Patel, an expert in theoretical physics, clenched his fists. "We're not looking at natural phenomena. Someone, or something, is manipulating history itself." Just then, an emergency broadcast interrupted every news channel across the planet. The face of General Marcus Reynolds, head of the United Nations Military Defense, appeared on the screen. "This is not an attack from any nation. We are facing an event beyond human understanding. Our world is breaking apart. We need every available force to contain these anomalies. Stay in your homes. Do not engage with the time rifts." But the warnings came too late. The chaos had already begun. The Battle of Times. In London, a group of British soldiers rushed through the streets, their rifles raised. What they saw made them freeze. Red-coated British soldiers from the 18th century were fighting against World War I Nazi troops, both sides unaware that they were centuries apart. Private Ethan Brooks, a modern-day soldier, raised his rifle. "What the hell are we supposed to do? Who's the enemy?" Sergeant Helen Carter narrowed her eyes. "Everyone is the enemy until we figure out what's going on." Gunfire erupted. A Nazi tank rolled forward, its cannon aimed at a group of knights on horseback. The knights, fearless and determined, charged with their swords raised. Moments before impact, a time rift appeared, swallowing the entire battlefield. In its place, a squad of futuristic soldiers wearing exoskeleton suits emerged. "Command, we have a problem," Carter said into her radio. "A big one." The man who knew too much. Deep in the Nevada desert, inside a high-security bunker, a prisoner sat in a dark cell. His name was Gabriel Voss, a former scientist who had disappeared years ago after making terrifying predictions about time manipulation. Now he was back, and the world needed answers. General Reynolds walked into the room, his expression grim. "Tell me how to stop this." Voss looked up, his eyes hollow. "You can't stop it." "Then tell me who's behind it." Voss leaned forward. "There's a war happening, General. A war across time. And we're already losing. The shadow enemy." At the Hadron Collider facility, Dr. Carter and Dr. Patel studied the data. The time rifts weren't random. They were controlled, each one placed at a strategic location, as if someone was rewriting history on purpose. "We're not just experiencing time breaking," Patel said. "We're witnessing an invasion." "But who? And why?" Carter asked. Before Patel could answer, a massive rift opened inside the laboratory. From within the swirling vortex, dark figures in high-tech armor emerged. Their weapons crackled with energy, unlike anything seen before. Security officers fired, but the bullets passed through their bodies as if they were ghosts. One of the invaders, a towering figure in black armor, stepped forward. His voice echoed, layered with an unnatural distortion. "Your time is over." Then everything went dark. A war across history begins. The world as humanity knew it was gone. The temporal rift was no longer just a phenomenon. It was a battlefield. A war across history had begun. The first anomaly. The air inside the military base was thick with tension. The team stood in a dimly lit briefing room, staring at the glowing rift swirling before them. General Carter, A hardened man with years of experience addressed them in a stern voice. This is no ordinary mission. Our intelligence has detected a time anomaly. Someone is changing history, and we need to stop it. You'll be going through this rift into the past. Your objective is to gather intel and neutralize any threats. The soldiers nodded. Captain Ryan Cole, their leader, checked his rifle. Where exactly are we going, sir? World War IA. But here's the problem. Nazi forces have advanced alien weapons. We have reason to believe someone is supplying them from the future. A murmur spread through the room. Sergeant Lewis, a communications expert, frowned. If Nazis have future weapons, that war won't end the way history says it did. General Carter's gaze hardened. Exactly. We believe this is part of a larger plan. If they win, humanity may never reach the stars. The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances, a dark timeline where mankind never advanced. The thought was terrifying, but there was no time to hesitate. The countdown began. As the rift pulsed with energy, Captain Cole gave the order, "Move out." The team stepped forward, and the world around them blurred, landing in chaos. The transition was violent. They fell through a tunnel of light, their bodies twisting and turning. Then, sudden impact. They hit the ground hard, rolling across dirt and rubble. Gunfire echoed in the distance. Explosions shook the air. The smell of smoke and burning metal filled their lungs. "Status check," Cole shouted, pushing himself up. "All good, sir," Lewis called out. Private Harris groaned. "I think I landed on a rock." Cole scanned the area. They were in the middle of a battlefield, somewhere in war-torn Europe. Buildings lay in ruins. Soldiers in Nazi uniforms fired at approaching Allied forces. But something was wrong. Beyond the standard rifles and tanks, Nazi soldiers wielded sleek black weapons with glowing blue energy cores. One soldier fired, and a pulse of energy vaporized an entire Allied squad. "Damn it," Cole muttered. "They really do have future tech." His team took cover behind a wrecked vehicle. "Orders, sir?" Lewis asked. Cole's mind raced. "We need to find out where they're getting these weapons. But first, we help those Allied forces. If the Nazis win here, everything changes." He signaled to his team. "Suppressive fire. Move in." Turning the tide. Bullets and energy blasts filled the air. Cole's team fired with precision, taking down enemy soldiers with their advanced training. The Nazis, despite their superior weapons, were caught off guard by the Special Forces tactics. Flanking left. Harris yelled, sliding into cover and taking out two enemies with clean shots. Grenade out. Lewis tossed an explosive, clearing a fortified position. The Allied soldiers noticed the shift. A British officer, wounded but still fighting, saw the newcomers. "Who the bloody hell are you lot?" "Reinforcements," Cole called back. "We need to push forward." With their help, the Allies gained ground. The Nazis, despite their alien weapons, fell back. Finally, the battlefield went silent. The surviving Allied forces gathered, panting and covered in dirt. The British officer approached. "I don't know where you came from, but you just saved our lives." Cole nodded. "We're here to stop those weapons. Where are they coming from?" The officer frowned. "Rumors say the Nazis have a secret bunker deep in the Black Forest. Strange lights, strange noises. Whatever they're doing, it's not normal." Cole turned to his team. "That's our target. Gear up. We're going in." As they moved, a shadow watched them from the ruins. A figure in a dark cloak, holding a futuristic device, whispered into it. "They've arrived. Initiate the next phase." The air shimmered, and the figure vanished. The Time Raiders. The air inside the underground base was tense. Captain Reynolds stood before the holographic screen, his sharp eyes scanning the data streams flashing before him. The anomalies in time were no longer random. Someone was behind them. Someone powerful. Dr. Evelyn Carter, the team's scientist, adjusted her glasses and pointed at the screen. "I've found the source of the disruptions, a group called the Time Raiders. They're manipulating history for their own gain. If we don't stop them, the past, present, and future will be rewritten." Reynolds clenched his fists. "Who are they? What do they want?" Evelyn tapped on the console, and a series of images appeared, scenes from different points in history. Roman armies suddenly vanishing, Viking ships appearing in medieval battles, futuristic soldiers standing alongside ancient warriors. They are time-traveling conquerors. They take the best warriors, the strongest leaders, and use them to reshape history. Their goal is domination, complete control over time itself. Lieutenant Jackson whistled. "That's insane. How do we stop them?" Evelyn took a deep breath. "We fight fire with fire. We bring together warriors from across time. Viking berserkers, samurai warriors, Roman centurions, and even rebels from the 31st century. We need an army that can counter them." Reynolds nodded. "Then we have no choice. We must go back in time and recruit the greatest fighters history has ever known." The first destination was the icy shores of 9th century Scandinavia. The time portal shimmered, and the team stepped into a cold, brutal battlefield. Viking warriors clashed with enemy tribes, their battle cries echoing through the mountains. A massive figure towered over the others, swinging an enormous axe. His long, braided beard was covered in frost, and his eyes burned with battle fury. Reynolds approached cautiously, raising his hands. "We come in peace. We seek warriors to fight a greater war, a war across time." The Viking chieftain laughed, his voice like rolling thunder. "You wear strange armor, stranger, but you speak with the heart of a warrior. Who do we fight?" "A force that threatens all of time itself." The Viking studied him for a moment, then grinned. "Then we fight together. I am Ragnar Ironfist. If there is battle and glory, my axe is yours." The next stop was 16th century Japan. The portal opened in the courtyard of a grand samurai castle. Warriors in gleaming armor trained under the watchful eye of their master. A man with a blade so sharp it could cut through the wind. Reynolds and his team approached with deep bows. "We seek warriors of honor. The Time Raiders threaten all of existence. Will you fight with us?" The samurai master observed them in silence. Then, in a swift motion, he drew his katana and pointed it at Reynolds' chest. "Strength alone is not enough. Show me your resolve." Reynolds drew his weapon and stepped forward. The fight was brief but intense, every move calculated, every strike precise. The samurai master nodded in approval. "You have the spirit of a warrior. I am Master Takeda. My blades shall cut down your enemies." The team continued their journey, gathering warriors from different ages. They stood before the mighty Roman centurions, their golden armor gleaming under the Mediterranean sun. General Marcus Varro, a legend in battle, agreed to fight. "If Rome stands eternal, so shall our swords." From the far future, they found rebel fighters who had battled against oppressive empires in the 31st century. Their leader, Commander Alira, was a woman with cybernetic implants and a plasma rifle that hummed with energy. "The Time Raiders have stolen my future. I will help you take it back." Finally, the warriors of different eras stood together in the underground base, preparing for war. Ragnar Ironfist tested his axe against Alira's plasma shield. Master Takeda meditated while Roman soldiers studied futuristic battle tactics. Evelyn watched them with awe. "We have warriors from across time. Now, we just need a plan." Reynolds took a deep breath. "Then let's give history a fight it will never forget." The Paradox Engine. The desert wind howled through the ruins of ancient Babylon, carrying dust and whispers of the past. Beneath the cracked stone, and buried beneath centuries of forgotten history, a secret slumbered. A machine beyond time, beyond reason. It was the Paradox Engine, a device capable of collapsing the very fabric of existence. Colonel Daniel Cross and his team stood at the edge of a massive underground chamber, their flashlights casting long shadows against the ancient walls. Symbols of an unknown language glowed faintly, pulsing with an eerie energy. The air smelled of rust and something unnatural, something that did not belong to this world. "This is it," whispered Dr. Evelyn Carter, her voice barely audible over the hum of the machine. The Paradox Engine. The machine was enormous, its structure a fusion of alien metal and ancient stone. Gears turned without any visible source of power, and streams of blue light flowed like liquid through cracks in the structure. At its center, a swirling vortex of energy crackled, bending the space around it. Captain Alex Ward tightened his grip on his rifle. "We shut it down. Now," before they activate it. But it was too late. A booming voice echoed through the chamber. "Ah, our guests have arrived." From the shadows, a figure emerged. Admiral Varric, leader of the Time Raiders. His golden armor shimmered under the machine's unnatural glow. Behind him, dozens of his soldiers stood in formation, weapons aimed at the human resistance. "You're too late, Colonel Cross," Varric continued, stepping closer. "The Paradox Engine is awakening. Soon, all of time will be rewritten, and humanity will bow to us, from the beginning to the end." Daniel clenched his jaw. "We'll stop you." Varric chuckled. "With what?" "Your primitive weapons. This machine will erase your resistance before it even begins. It will unmake your victories, rewrite your history. You won't just lose this war, Colonel. You will never have existed as a threat." The Paradox Engine roared to life. The vortex expanded, twisting reality itself. The walls of the chamber shimmered, showing glimpses of different timelines. Cities burning, ancient battles, people vanishing into nothingness. The past and future were being rewritten before their eyes. Dr. Carter grabbed Daniel's arm. "We have to overload it. If we disrupt the power core, it might collapse before it can complete the rewrite." "How much time do we have?" Alex asked. "Minutes. Maybe less." Daniel turned to his team. "Split up. Find a way to take it down. Now." Alex and two soldiers sprinted towards a control panel, blasting Time Raider guards along the way. Sparks flew as bullets struck the alien machinery, but the engine only roared louder. Evelyn ran toward a cluster of ancient inscriptions, scanning them frantically. "There," she pointed. "That pillar, it's the stabilizer. If we bring it down." A shot rang out. Evelyn gasped and stumbled back, clutching her side. Blood seeped through her fingers. Varric lowered his weapon, smiling cruelly. "You were saying." Daniel's rage exploded. He fired at Varric, forcing the Admiral to retreat behind his soldiers. He rushed to Evelyn, catching her before she fell. "Stay with me," he urged. She winced. "Go. Finish this." Daniel turned to Alex. "Blow the stabilizer." Alex nodded and placed explosive charges around the massive stone pillar. The machine's vortex swirled violently, pulling loose debris into the storm of energy. Time itself fractured. Visions of the past flickered like a broken film reel. The world shook. Varric roared in fury. "Stop them." Time Raiders charged, firing their weapons. The resistance fought back, dodging between the crumbling ruins. Daniel covered Alex as he armed the detonator. "Everyone get clear," Alex shouted. Daniel grabbed Evelyn and dragged her behind a fallen column. The explosion ripped through the chamber, sending shockwaves through time itself. The stabilizer shattered, and the Paradox Engine let out a piercing scream. The vortex collapsed inward, pulling everything into a blinding singularity. Varric's eyes widened. "No, you fools." He was cut off as the vortex swallowed him. Time Raiders were sucked into the collapsing void, their screams fading as history erased them. The walls cracked. The ground split apart. Daniel clutched Evelyn as the chamber began to collapse. "We're out of time. Move." The team scrambled up the crumbling stairway, barely escaping as the entire structure caved in behind them. The ruins of Babylon swallowed the Paradox Engine, burying it once more beneath the sands of time. Silence fell. The air was still. The machine was gone. Daniel looked at Evelyn, who was breathing weakly but alive. He exhaled in relief. "We did it." Alex stepped beside him, wiping dust from his face. For now, Daniel stared at the ruins, knowing that the war was far from over. But they had won this battle. The Time Raiders had lost their greatest weapon. Battle for the future. The battlefield stretched across time itself. Roman gladiators fought alongside World War I soldiers. Samurai clashed with futuristic battle drones. Musketeers reloaded their rifles while cybernetic warriors unleashed energy blasts. It was chaos, a war where past, present, and future collided. Commander Jack Reynolds stood on a crumbling rooftop, his gaze sweeping across the impossible battle. His team had just leaped through time, landing in the year 3000, a world ruled by the Time Raiders' supreme overlord. The sky was dark, filled with floating warships, their massive cannons aimed at the ruins below. "This is it," Jack said, gripping his pulse rifle. "This is the future we're trying to stop." Dr. Evelyn Carter, the team's historian and scientist, adjusted her time gauntlet. "The records say the war ended here. Humanity lost." "Then we change history," Jack replied. A massive explosion rocked the city. A towering war machine stomped through the rubble, its red eyes scanning for survivors. Soldiers from different centuries scattered, dodging the giant's laser fire. "Fall back. Regroup at the old temple ruins," Jack shouted. His team sprinted through the wreckage. Behind them, an army of cybernetic enforcers pursued. Plasma bolts burned through the air, tearing chunks from fallen buildings. As they reached the temple, a shadow loomed over them. A figure in dark armor, surrounded by a swirling aura of shifting time, stepped forward. The supreme overlord of the Time Raiders. "I have seen all possible futures," the overlord said, his voice echoing across time itself. "No matter what you do, humanity falls." Jack raised his rifle. "We'll see about that." The overlord extended a hand. Time fractured around them. The past and future blurred. Suddenly, Jack and his team were pulled into a vortex. They landed in the year 1500, in the middle of a battlefield between knights and invading raiders. "We're losing control of our jumps," Evelyn shouted. Jack gritted his teeth. They had one chance left. If they could travel back to the moment when the Time Raiders first rose to power, they could stop this future from ever happening. "Set coordinates," Jack ordered. Evelyn tapped furiously on her gauntlet. The vortex reopened. They leaped through time once more, toward the moment that would decide the fate of all humanity. The fall of reality. The sky tore open with cracks of golden lightning. Time itself twisted like a wounded beast, and the world bent into impossible shapes. Mountains flickered in and out of existence. Cities aged thousands of years in seconds, turning to dust before reappearing as towering steel fortresses. The paradox engine was breaking apart, and with it, reality itself. Captain Reynolds sprinted through the ruins of what had once been Washington, D.C. Now, it was a battlefield of clashing timelines. A medieval knight in silver armor charged past him, swinging a glowing energy sword. Moments later, a samurai appeared out of thin air, wielding a plasma rifle. Time was collapsing. If his team didn't reach the engine soon, all of history would be erased. "Move. Keep moving," Reynolds shouted. Dr. Voss, the team's scientist, stumbled over a broken street, her tablet flashing warning messages. "The rifts are accelerating. We don't have much time." From behind, an explosion rocked the street. A Roman war elephant, its tusks covered in metal plating, crushed an abandoned truck beneath its weight. Soldiers from different centuries, Vikings, World War I troops, and futuristic androids, fought side by side, all trapped in the chaos of the collapsing timeline. Reynolds pulled Voss up and looked around. His team was scattered. Sergeant Hayes was firing at a group of ancient warriors who had somehow acquired laser weapons. Private Lee was pinned down behind an overturned carriage from the 1800s, dodging arrows and bullets from enemies that shouldn't exist in the same time period. "We need to get to the engine," Voss cried. "It's in the time core, just beneath the ruins of the Capitol building." Reynolds turned toward the Capitol, or what was left of it. The structure flickered, shifting between a marble monument and a futuristic control tower. He didn't know how much longer it would remain stable. "Everyone, push forward," he commanded. The team fought their way through the madness. A T-Rex stormed through the battlefield, roaring as it vanished into a shimmering rift, replaced by a squad of cybernetic soldiers. The streets warped beneath their feet, and for a terrifying moment, Reynolds felt his body stretch as if he were being pulled across centuries. He gritted his teeth and pushed through. At the Capitol's entrance, a massive mechanical knight guarded the doors. Its eyes glowed red, and in one hand, it held a medieval sword crackling with raw energy. "It's a time construct," Voss shouted. "A guardian of the paradox engine." The knight raised its sword and swung. Reynolds barely dodged as the blade cut through stone like butter. Hayes opened fire, his bullets bouncing off its armored chest. "Nothing's working," Hayes yelled. Voss scanned the creature with her tablet. "Its energy core is unstable. We can overload it." Reynolds nodded. "Lee, hit it with an EMP charge." Lee pulled a grenade from his belt and hurled it at the knight. The explosion sent out a wave of blue energy. The knight froze, its circuits sparking wildly before collapsing in a heap of broken metal. "Go, go," Reynolds ordered. The team rushed into the Capitol. Inside, the walls shimmered, shifting between past and future. Paintings of old presidents twisted into digital screens displaying unknown symbols. At the heart of the chamber stood the paradox engine, a massive, glowing sphere of shifting energy. Time itself pulsed within it, an unstable storm of fractured history. Voss ran to the control panel. "It's completely out of sync. If we don't stabilize it now, reality will shatter." Reynolds turned to his team. "We hold the line. Whatever comes through those rifts, we fight it off until Voss fixes the engine." The moment he spoke, the room erupted in chaos. Portals opened all around them. A Spartan warrior leaped through, thrusting his spear at Hayes. A cyborg from the distant future appeared, its laser cannon charging. Creatures from forgotten ages, shadows of history, all poured into the room. Reynolds fired at the cyborg, ducking behind a shattered pillar as its laser scorched the wall. Hayes engaged the Spartan in brutal hand-to-hand combat, while Lee was forced to fight off a pack of creatures that looked like prehistoric wolves. "Almost there," Voss shouted. Her fingers flew across the controls. "I just need a few more seconds." "We don't have a few seconds," Reynolds shouted back. The engine pulsed violently. The floor cracked, and for a horrifying moment, the entire team saw the universe unraveling beyond the walls. Stars collapsing, galaxies twisting into nothingness. Time was about to end. "Now, VOSS," Reynolds roared. With one final command, Voss activated the stabilization sequence. The engine pulsed one last time before releasing a shockwave of pure energy. The portals snapped shut. The warriors and creatures faded into nothingness. The world around them solidified, stabilizing back into a single timeline. Reynolds fell to his knees, gasping. The Capitol was still there. The sky was normal again. Time had been saved. Voss slumped against the console, exhausted but victorious. "We did it," she whispered. Reynolds looked around at his team, all of them battered but alive. "It's over," he said. "For now." Outside, the world was quiet, but they all knew the scars of the paradox would never fully fade. History had been rewritten, and somewhere, deep in the cosmos, time still held its breath, waiting. The betrayal of time. The air inside the time ship felt heavy, almost suffocating. Captain Ryan and his team stood in shock, staring at the one person they never expected to betray them. Dr. Marcus Kane. The scientist had been with them from the very beginning. He had helped build the time engine, crack the codes of the Time Raiders, and even risked his life to save them. But now, standing before them with a cold smirk, he looked like a stranger. "Marcus, what have you done?" Sarah whispered, her voice shaking. Kane laughed, shaking his head. "You still don't understand, do you? The Time Raiders were never the enemy. They are the future, our future." Ryan clenched his fists. "You were working with them all along. Everything we fought for, everything we lost. It was all part of your plan." Kane nodded. "Not just my plan. The ultimate plan. History is a prison, Captain. You think we are fighting to protect it, but you are just maintaining a cycle of suffering. Why let time control us when we can control time?" He stepped forward, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "The Time Raiders have unlocked something greater than just time travel. They have found the path to true power, to godhood, by rewriting reality itself." The room fell silent. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Even in their wildest nightmares, they had never imagined this. Sarah gritted her teeth. "You're talking about erasing history, destroying everything we know. Billions of lives." Kane interrupted, raising his hand. "Not destroying, reshaping, improving. We can erase wars before they start. We can erase hunger, pain, and suffering. We can build a perfect reality, one where we are the gods." Ryan took a deep breath. "And who decides what's perfect? You? The Raiders? No one should have that kind of power." Kane sighed, shaking his head. "I knew you wouldn't understand. That's why you have no place in the new world." Suddenly, the ship shuddered. The time stream outside fractured like a shattered mirror. The control panels flickered. Something was wrong. "What's happening?" Ethan, the ship's engineer, shouted. Kane grinned. "The timeline is reaching its breaking point. The Raiders have activated the Prime Chrono device. Once it reaches full power, time itself will reset according to our design." Ryan turned to his crew. "We have to stop it. Now." Kane raised a small device in his hand. "You won't even get the chance." He pressed a button. Instantly, the ship's defenses activated. Laser turrets dropped from the ceiling, targeting the crew. Ryan and the others dived for cover as the room exploded into chaos. "Get to the control panel," Ryan shouted, rolling behind a metal crate as a laser bolt scorched past him. Ethan sprinted towards the main console, dodging fire. Sarah grabbed a plasma rifle from the emergency rack and returned fire, forcing the turrets to shift their aim. "Kane, stop this," Ryan yelled. "There's still time to fix this." But Kane only laughed, disappearing into the corridor leading to the time core. Ryan cursed. "Sarah, cover me. I'm going after him." Sarah nodded, providing covering fire while Ryan dashed through the doorway. He followed Kane into the heart of the ship, the Chrono Core room. Inside, the reality-bending energy of the time engine pulsed wildly, growing unstable. Kane stood before the control panel, his hands moving across the glowing interface. "It's too late, Ryan," Kane said, his voice calm. "In moments, the reset will begin. We will become the architects of existence itself." Ryan aimed his pistol at him. "Step away. Now." Kane smirked. "You won't shoot me. You still think there's a way to save me. But I don't need saving." The ship trembled again. The time fractures widened. The entire universe was on the brink of rewriting itself. Ryan had no choice. He fired. The shot struck Kane in the shoulder. The scientist staggered back, clutching his wound. "You?" he gasped. "You would rather let chaos continue than embrace perfection." Ryan stepped forward, pressing the override switch on the console. "Perfection isn't real, Kane, and no one should play God." The alarms blared. The Prime Chrono device destabilized. The system collapsed. Time began to stitch itself back together. Kane collapsed to his knees. "No, no, you don't understand what you've done." Ryan grabbed him. "You're coming with me. We're getting out of here." Dragging Kane, He ran back towards the main deck, where Sarah and Ethan had finished disabling the defenses. "The ship is stabilizing," Ethan reported. "We did it." Ryan looked down at Kane. "It's over." Kane chuckled weakly. "Over? No, Captain. This was just the beginning." As the time fractures sealed and reality restored, Kane's words echoed in Ryan's mind. Had they truly won, or had they just delayed an even greater war? One thing was certain. The fight for time was far from over. The last time jump. The time chamber hummed with unstable energy. The last few human survivors stood in a circle, their faces filled with both fear and determination. Captain Ethan Graves, battered and exhausted, looked at his team. "This is our last chance," he said, his voice heavy. "We jump one final time, to the moment before the first rift appeared." Dr. Amelia Carter, the scientist who had discovered time displacement, adjusted the damage controls. Sparks flew from the console. The machine was barely holding together. "The timeline is already corrupted," she warned. "I don't know what will happen when we arrive." Ethan nodded. There was no other choice. The Time Raiders had already wiped out most of humanity. If they failed now, Earth would be lost forever. "Activate it," he ordered. Amelia pressed the button. A violent light swallowed them. They landed hard. Ethan gasped, the air forced from his lungs as he hit the ground. His team groaned, struggling to get up. The time jump had thrown them into an alley, the smell of burning metal thick in the air. He pushed himself up and looked around. Something was wrong. This was supposed to be Earth before the invasion, before the first time rift opened. But the city before them was unfamiliar. Skyscrapers stood taller than he remembered, built with strange dark metal. Giant holograms flickered across the sky, displaying symbols of the Time Raiders. "No," whispered Sergeant Reed, his hand tightening on his rifle. "We were too late." Amelia scanned the surroundings, her face pale. "This isn't the past we knew," she said, horrified. "The timeline is already rewritten. The Time Raiders have won." Ethan clenched his fists. They were supposed to stop the war before it even started, but now they were in a world where the war never happened, because humanity had already lost. A siren blared above them. A mechanical voice rang out. "Warning. 10 Huoril Anomalies DETCTED. Elimination Protocol activated." Ethan's blood ran cold. They weren't just in enemy territory. They were anomalies in a history that no longer remembered them. The Time Raiders would hunt them down like errors in a system. "Move. Now," Ethan barked. They sprinted through the streets, staying in the shadows. Drones hovered above, scanning for disturbances. The roads were empty. There were no normal humans. Only the cold, lifeless structures of a world conquered by time. They ducked into a ruined building. Dust coated the floor, and broken machinery lay scattered around. "What do we do now?" asked Private Sanchez, his voice shaking. "We can't go back. We're stuck in their world." Ethan looked at Amelia. "Can we fix this?" Amelia hesitated, thinking fast. "If we can find the central time core, the thing that controls all these changes, maybe we can force one last reset." Reed frowned. "And if we fail?" Amelia took a deep breath. "Then we disappear forever." The journey to the time core was suicide. The city was patrolled by machines, tall, skeletal enforcers with glowing red eyes. They moved with unnatural precision, scanning every corner, searching for them. "We're not just fighting soldiers anymore," Ethan muttered. "We're fighting time itself." They weaved through the ruins, dodging patrols. At one point, a drone passed within inches of Amelia's head, its scanner sweeping over them. She held her breath. It moved on, but the tension didn't ease. Finally, they reached the center of the city. A massive black tower rose into the sky, lightning crackling around it. "The time core," Amelia whispered. Ethan tightened his grip on his weapon. "We end this now." Getting inside was impossible until an opportunity presented itself. A transport vehicle, shaped like a hovering disc, landed outside the tower. Two mechanical guards escorted a prisoner, a man, bruised and restrained. Ethan's heart stopped. It was an older version of himself. The team stared in shock. The man's face was scared, his eyes hollow with years of pain. "Another version of you survived in this timeline," Amelia said, stunned. "But he lost." Ethan's jaw tightened. He wasn't going to let that happen again. They launched their attack. It was quick, brutal. Reed shot down the drones. Amelia disabled the alarms. Ethan took down the guards with precise strikes. The older Ethan looked up at him, weak but determined. "I knew you'd come," he rasped. "You have one last chance." Ethan knelt beside him. "How do we fix this?" The older Ethan smiled sadly. "You already know." He pressed something into Ethan's hand, a small device pulsing with light. The reset switch, Amelia realized. It will rewrite the timeline again. The older Ethan coughed, shaking his head. "Not rewrite. Destroy. This timeline is too broken. You must erase it and start again." Ethan's stomach twisted. If they used it, everything in this timeline, including everyone who existed in it, would vanish. "Are you sure?" Ethan asked softly. The older him gave a weak nod. "If you don't, we stay like this forever. Erase us, so you can win." The final moment arrived. They reached the time core. Alarms blared. Machines stormed in from all sides. Reed and Sanchez held the line, gunning down enforcers as Ethan and Amelia rushed forward. The time core pulsed, a massive sphere of shifting energy. "Do it now," Amelia shouted. Ethan held the reset switch in his hand. He looked back one last time at the world around him. The city of the lost, the broken timeline, the future that should have never been. He pressed the switch. A blinding light exploded outward, swallowing everything. Ethan felt himself falling, dissolving, vanishing into time itself. And then, darkness. Somewhere, sometime, a new future was beginning. The final war across time. The world was broken. The sky above cracked like glass, revealing glimpses of different timelines. Fire and lightning raged across history itself. Time was collapsing, and with it, humanity's last hope. General Ethan Hayes stood on the battlefield, gripping his rifle. Beside him, a samurai from feudal Japan held his katana, his eyes burning with the spirit of battle. A Viking warrior roared, slamming his axe against his shield. On the other side, a Roman centurion adjusted his helmet, his legionaries standing firm behind him. And above them, futuristic soldiers floated on anti-gravity platforms, their plasma rifles glowing in the night. The final war had begun. A battle across ages. The enemy came in waves, monstrous creatures from beyond time itself. Some looked like shadows with burning red eyes. Others had metallic bodies, their limbs twisting like living metal. They were the Time Reapers, beings who fed on the destruction of history. In ancient Egypt, warriors in golden armor fought beside modern-day soldiers. Arrows and bullets rained upon the enemy. The pyramids stood tall, witnessing a battle never seen before. In medieval Europe, knights clashed with the Reapers, their swords breaking against the creatures' hard exoskeletons. Then, from the sky, futuristic warships descended, firing laser cannons, turning the dark night into blazing fire. In the year 3100 AD, robotic soldiers stood side by side with World War II fighters. Planes from the past flew next to spaceships from the future. The sky was filled with explosions, the stars themselves trembling at the chaos. The last stand. Ethan turned to the ancient warriors, raising his voice above the noise of war. "We hold this line. No matter what comes, we fight until the end." The samurai nodded, his grip tightening on his sword. The Viking let out a battle cry. The Roman centurion slammed his spear into the ground. The Time Reapers attacked. A massive creature, twice the size of an elephant, charged at them, its claws slashing through warriors like paper. Ethan fired his gun, the bullets doing little to stop it. Then, an archer from the Mongol Empire released a flaming arrow. The beast shrieked as the fire spread across its body. A knight swung his sword, cutting through a reaper's neck. The creature's head dissolved into dust. A futuristic drone zipped past, launching missiles into the enemy ranks. The battlefield was a storm of fire, steel, and energy. The key to victory. In the middle of the chaos, a portal flickered. It was the source, the heart of time itself. If the warriors could reach it, they could reset history, sealing the cracks in time. But the Reapers knew this. They sent their strongest, a creature made of pure darkness, its form shifting between different timelines. One moment, it looked like a medieval knight. The next, it took the shape of a futuristic war machine. Ethan charged, his gun blazing. The creature swiped at him, sending him crashing into the ground. Before it could finish him, a Spartan warrior leaped onto its back, stabbing his spear deep into its chest. The creature roared, throwing him off. A Mongol rider raced forward, firing arrow after arrow. A World War II soldier unloaded his rifle into the beast. A futuristic commando fired plasma shots. The combined power of warriors from all eras forced the creature back. Ethan staggered to his feet. He saw the portal flickering, the source calling to him. If he could reach it, if he could reset time, humanity had a chance. The final sacrifice. With one last push, the warriors fought their way to the portal. Ethan ran, his breath ragged, his body aching. The Reapers swarmed, trying to stop him. Then, one by one, the warriors sacrificed themselves to clear his path. The samurai stood firm, slashing through enemies before a Reaper's claw impaled him. The Viking roared, hurling his axe into the largest beast before being pulled into the darkness. The Roman centurion fought until the last, his shield raised high before he was overwhelmed. Ethan reached the portal. With his last ounce of strength, he plunged his hand into the light. The world around him twisted and shook. A bright explosion swallowed everything. A new dawn. Ethan woke up in a field. The sky was clear. The air smelled fresh. He sat up, looking around. No war, no Reapers, no broken time. It had worked. The warriors were gone. History had been restored. Time had been saved. He smiled, though his heart ached for those lost. They had fought together, humans from different ages, united against an impossible enemy. And they had won. The final war across time was over, and history would never forget. The chrono reset. The paradox engine trembled, its core splitting apart as energy surged in all directions. The battle around it had ended, but the real war was just beginning. Captain Riker and his team stood at the edge of destruction, watching as the machine they had fought so hard to stop finally collapsed. "It's over," Lieutenant Mason shouted, his voice barely audible over the deafening roar of the machine breaking apart. But Riker wasn't so sure. He could feel something shifting, something beyond space and time itself. The energy released from the paradox engine wasn't just fading, it was unraveling reality. "Hold on," he yelled, but it was too late. A blinding white light swallowed them all. Time twisted, the past and future colliding in an explosion of paradox. The universe screamed, resetting itself in an instant. Riker gasped as he opened his eyes. He was no longer on the battlefield. He was standing in the middle of a grassy plain, the wind blowing gently against his face. The sky was clear, the world untouched by war. "Where am I?" he whispered. Then he saw it. He was standing at the ruins of an ancient temple, the stone walls crumbling with age. But something was wrong. This place, it felt familiar. He had never been here before, yet his mind whispered that he had. Footsteps approached from behind. Riker turned quickly, finding Mason standing there, his eyes wide with confusion. "Captain, what just happened?" Mason asked, rubbing his head. "1 second, we were in the middle of the explosion, and now we're here." Riker didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked down at his hands. He was still in his battle gear, but something felt different. He glanced at Mason, then beyond him. "Where are the others?" Riker asked. Mason turned in a slow circle, scanning the area. I don't know. They were with us, weren't they?" Something in Riker's gut told him the truth. "They were sent back," he said, realization dawning on him. The timeline reset. Everything is back to the way it was. Mason frowned. "Then why are we still here? Why do we remember?" Riker didn't have an answer, but something pulled at his attention. A faint glow among the ruins caught his eye. He stepped forward, pushing aside broken stone and debris, until his fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. A weapon, but not just any weapon. It was futuristic, far beyond anything that should exist in this era. Its sleek design, its glowing energy core, it was unmistakably from the war they had just fought. Yet this temple was ancient. The weapon should not be here. And yet it was. Mason took a step back, his face pale. "Captain, what does this mean?" Riker gripped the weapon tightly, his mind racing. The war was supposed to be over. Time had been restored. And yet this weapon, this impossible proof, told a different story. "It means time is still watching us," Riker murmured. "And maybe the war isn't over after all." Mason swallowed hard, looking around as if expecting something or someone to emerge from the ruins. The wind picked up, carrying a whisper that neither of them could understand. Something had changed. Something had been left behind. And time was not done with them yet.